All right, listeners, we're back. And today we are diving into something that's been requested a bunch recently.
Yeah, a lot of people have been asking about this
We're
one.
going to be looking at how trauma can manifest in the body,
Right.
and then kind of the potential for using psychedelics to help process that trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So the source material that we're using today is actually some translated excerpts from a Russian text
Okay.
that delves into all these connections.
Cool.
So yeah, it's pretty wild stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, just this basic concept that our bodies are kind of like living memory banks, you know,
Right.
holding on to echoes of past traumas.
Hmm.
Like, it's pretty mind blowing when you really think about it.
Yeah, it is. And the text even goes a bit beyond some of the more obvious signs of trauma, your heart racing after like a near-miss car accident.
Yeah.
It suggests that even things like chronic pain, like things we often just chalk up to like physical causes, could actually be rooted in some unresolved trauma.
Well, wait. So you're saying like my nagging shoulder pain
Mm-hmm.
that I've had for like years could be tied to something that like happened way back when.
Yeah, it's possible.
I just always assumed it was, bad posture or something.
Sure. But that's what's so fascinating about this perspective is that it really encourages you to look deeper. And the text actually gives this really interesting example of a woman who suffered from really debilitating back pain. And through a combination of body work and therapy, she uncovered this repressed memory of a childhood fall.
Oh,
And as she started to process that trauma, her pain actually significantly lessened.
wow. Okay, so that's starting to kind of connect the dots for me a little bit. But before we get into how psychedelics actually come into play here, I'm curious about this idea of like the body building this subconscious defense against further trauma.
Right.
Like, what does that actually look like, in practice?
Well, think about somebody who's experienced a physical attack, for example. The text describes this as a feeling of being constantly on edge, like a predator is always lurking nearby, even years after the event has happened.
Wow.
So this could manifest in different ways, like unconsciously clenching their fists, hunching their shoulders, or even developing a stiff neck. It's like these are ways of protecting themselves even when the threat is long gone.
So it's almost like their body is stuck in that state of fight or flight, even when their mind isn't consciously aware of any danger.
Exactly. And this actually brings us to the concept of what's often called stuck energy, which is something that's often discussed in practices like yoga and Reiki.
Okay.
And the Russian researchers actually use this fascinating metaphor to describe it. They talk about it as like untangling knots of energy in the body.
Yeah.
And they actually link these knots to specific traumas, suggesting that the body's natural flow of energy is disrupted by these events.
You know, I've always been a little bit skeptical of that whole energy work thing, but this idea of trauma disrupting flow, like a kink in a hose or something, it kind of makes me think about it a little differently. Is there like a scientific basis for this, or is it more of just like a metaphorical concept?
Well, if we look at the nervous system, it starts to become a bit clearer. Trauma can absolutely dysregulate our stress response. And the text actually details this case study of a man who developed really severe digestive issues after being in a car accident. And years later, he was still experiencing like stomach cramps whenever he had to drive,
Oh, wow.
even though he consciously, felt fine, but his body was still holding on to that trauma.
So like these physical symptoms are almost like the body's way of trying to tell us that something's wrong,
Oh.
even if we're not consciously aware of it.
Mhm.
It's like a secret language we need to learn to decipher or something.
Precisely. And these somatic symptoms, as they're often called, they're often dismissed as being psychosomatic or, all in your head. But what this research suggests is that the body is holding on to these experiences in a very real physical way.
Okay, so then how do psychedelics actually fit into all of this? The text mentions them as being like a key to unlocking these hidden messages.
Right. Well, imagine that all these memories and emotions are locked away in this vault deep inside you. Psychedelics, in a way, they act as the key to that vault, allowing access to those deeply buried experiences and the physical sensations that are connected to them.
Okay, but isn't it a bit of a leap to say that psychedelics can like unlock all these hidden messages?
Sure.
What does the text say about like potential risks or limitations?
Yeah, well, the text definitely acknowledges that psychedelics are powerful tools and they should be used with caution. And with proper guidance, they can offer profound insights, but they're not a magic bullet. It really emphasizes the importance of integration, that process of making sense of those experiences and incorporating them into your life in a meaningful way.
So how does this unlocking actually work? Like, what's going on in the brain when someone takes psilocybin, for example?
Well, psychedelics alter our perception by disrupting our habitual thought patterns and increasing activity in certain brain regions. This allows for new insights and connections to emerge, including a heightened awareness of the body's signals.
Okay, so the text describes this as like an intensified body-mind connection. It sounds like you become acutely aware of like every sensation, like, a tight chest or knot in your stomach. And you might even start to understand the emotions behind those sensations. But isn't that potentially like really overwhelming?
It can be intense, yeah. The text describes how psychedelics can bring suppressed emotions to the surface, which can actually manifest as physical discomfort. Like someone might feel a heaviness in their chest, a wave of warmth through their limbs, or even a sharp pain in a specific area. It's like the body is releasing what it's been holding on to for so long.
So it's not necessarily a comfortable or pleasant
Yeah.
experience, but it's part of the healing process.
Exactly. It's important to remember that these sensations, while sometimes intense, are not inherently dangerous. The key is to approach these experiences with a sense of curiosity
Mhm.
and to allow the body to kind of guide the process.
This has been a really incredible deep dive. I think the key takeaways for me are the interconnectedness of the mind and body and how trauma can become like trapped within us. And maybe psychedelics offer this unique way to access and address that trauma, though it's obviously important to approach them with respect and careful consideration.
Absolutely. And if our bodies are truly holding on to all these past experiences, what possibilities might open up by learning to listen to those subtle messages? That's something for all of us to think about.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And this is just the starting point, you know?
Mhm.
We encourage you to dive deeper into these topics and keep an open mind. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time.
See you next time.